It begins not with war or politics, but with hunger. Before the revolution had slogans or muskets, it had empty cupboards. In the colonies of the 1750s, life was measured by what could be grown, caught, traded, or salted before the next frost. The hearth was the center of the home, the heart of the colony. From dawn until candlelight, the day revolved around bread, broth, and the rhythm of survival. Benjamin Franklin once wrote, "A full belly is the mother of all good company." But in truth, full bellies were rare. To eat in the mid-18th century was to participate in a delicate bargain between weather and will, empire and endurance. The colonies had no ice boxes, no safe water, and little control over what ships arrived or when. And yet, from Carolina's salt marshes to the snow-choked farms of New Hampshire, families found ways to make do, and to make do beautifully. Spring meant want. Pantries were thin, barrels empty, and families stretched their meals with faith. The last of the salt pork was gray, the flour damp, the peas old. John Adams, still a young lawyer in 1756, wrote, "The man who can subsist on Indian meal alone is made for a republic." And many did. Cornmeal mush at dawn, hoe cakes by the fire at dusk. Fresh food was scarce, so colonists turned to whatever survived the winter. Pickled beets, dried apples, smoked fish. Across the Atlantic, ships from London carried tea, sugar, flour, and molasses. But wind and war decided when they arrived. A good voyage took 8 weeks, a bad one, 14. By then, half the cargo might have spoiled. Philadelphia merchants grumbled that a cask of molasses cost more in delay than in tax. And still, the dockside cranes turned, lowering barrels onto wagons bound for the interior, rattling along muddy roads to Lancaster or York, 4 or 5 days each way. Food was not simply sustenance, it was logistics. When summer came, the colonies breathed again. Markets filled with early beans and berries, peas, onions, and greens. Women worked in what they called summer kitchens, sheds apart from the home to keep the heat away, boiling jam, smoking meat, drying apples on the rooftop. Every meal was a test against time. Butter turned inside a day, milk soured by noon. Bread baked at sunrise went stale before sunset. Franklin warned in Poor Richard's Almanac, "To lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals." But the truth was simpler. They ate quickly or lost what they had. Ships from the Caribbean brought sugar, rum, and molasses when storms or warships didn't send them to the bottom. By the time those barrels reached Boston, many were leaking pitch and fermenting in the sun. A Philadelphia merchant's journal from 1757 noted, of 16 casks of molasses, 3 were spilt entire, and the rest came in thick as tar. Still, summer meals were bright and hearty. Succotash of corn and beans, eel pies along the coast, johnny cakes hot from the griddle. Men drank small beer or cider with every meal. Safer than most wells. Sweeter than water could ever be. If summer was abundance, autumn was arithmetic. Every household counted barrels and bins like a bookkeeper of survival. Salted pork hung in smokehouses. Apples were pressed into cider. Women scalded jars, sealed wax, and prayed for a mild winter. By 1757, the French and Indian War had begun to starve the markets. British officers requisitioned flour, cattle, and grain from colonial farms. Prices rose like smoke. One Virginian farmer wrote in 1758, "We are grown used to hunger as to the king's taxes. They both return each year." Trade was strangled by empire. Salt and sugar bore tariffs. Wheat exports were restricted. Even the humble coffee bean became a luxury whispered of in ports. The voyage from England to the Chesapeake stretched to 3 months under blockade. By then, Half the flour had molded, half the salt meat had spoiled. Colonists turned to substitutions: chicory for coffee, molasses for sugar, cornmeal for bread. Even the grandest tables in Williamsburg began to reflect the same frugality as a frontier cabin: stewed vegetables, boiled meats, and what one observer called the plainness of necessity. Winter was the true master of the colonies. Snow and hunger arrived hand in hand, and the months turned slow and silent. Families rationed bread. The air smelled of tallow, wood smoke, and desperation. George Washington, then still a young officer, wrote from his winter quarters in 1757, "We have little provision left, and the men are much dispirited. The beef long salted, the flour near gone." In towns and farms alike, the meals grew repetitive. Stews thickened with turnips, salt pork boiled until pale, hard bread softened in milk. The Grube family diary from Pennsylvania notes one February entry: "The snow fell heavy, and we eat what we could of the salted meat, though it gave us thirst through the night. Even comfort came salted. Porridge made of cornmeal and molasses. Hasty pudding stirred slow by the fire. A mug of cider, sometimes warmed with cloves when spirits allowed." Most families ate less than half the sugar a modern person does today, and every spoonful was precious. Yet even then, there was gratitude. Sunday meals, however meager, began and ended with thanks. Food shaped the colonies as surely as politics ever did. Scarcity taught thrift, distance taught patience, and hunger taught the colonies to rely upon themselves. From the first hard crust to the last sip of cider, they learned what empire had not, that independence begins not in parliaments, but in kitchens. As Franklin fought the proprietors in London, families at home faced their own war, against spoilage, against cold, against the long uncertainty of the sea. And in that struggle, something greater than bread was rising. In every bowl of cornmeal and every jug of cider lay the makings of an independent people.